Hi, I'm David and I'm going to talk to you a bit today about how to compose classical music pieces, especially on the piano because I play a little piano myself. I think the first thing to talk about when playing or composing or improvising a new piece is the form and structure of the piece. Obviously you need to know the basics like harmony and counterpoint, but when it actually comes to creating a piece, probably the first thing I'd say you want to do is think of a small motif of a melody in your head. This may be 4 or 5 notes long, and you may just want to play around on the keyboard and in your head until you find something you like. But once you have this general motive, you can then either construct a phrase which consists of several motives joined together. And normally if you construct a phrase, it's from anywhere between 2 and 8 bars long, depending on the speed of the music. And the way to join motives into a phrase is to generally keep the rhythm the same and have a very similar, what could be compared to derivation or growth of a motive. So you may have a tune of 3 motives which makes up a phrase with a pause at the end to complete the phrase. So this is your basic building blocks for your piece. So once you've created this phrase, you'll probably want to put a harmony to it. Most common harmonies to use are 1 and 5 chords. Chords 1 and 5. Obviously you need to know a bit about harmony to understand that. And you may, in your first phrase of say 3 motives, you may start off with a 1 chord and finish with a 5 chord. So you may do a 1 chord for the first 2 motives and 5 for the last 2. Or you may just use a 1 chord throughout the whole phrase, or a 5 chord. You can mix things up. You can use a 6 chord or a 3rd chord, a 3rd minor chord. But generally the opening of a piece is very stable, so you don't want anything too remote or too distant or away from the basic 1, 4 and 5 harmonies. Having completed the first sort of half of what is the opening of your sentence, you basically repeat the whole phrase and usually transpose it so that to a different chord, which may be that you may use, for example, the 5 chord for your second phrase, or if you use 1 and 5 for the first phrase, you probably use 5 followed by 1 for the second phrase, so you have symmetry and you invert it. You can use other derivations. You can use 1 4 5 1 or 1 6 3 1 and a whole variety of things, but generally you want something stable because it's the beginning of the piece. On the piano there are all kinds of different types of accompaniments you can use to complement your piece, but the most important thing probably is that you listen to your overall composition, and the whole thing together sounds fluent. But the types of accompaniment you can use simply a chordal accompaniment where you simply repeat a chord, probably with the same rhythm constantly. You may change, of course, you will change the harmony, adapt the harmony to the chord. You may use broken chords where you break the chord into single notes in sequence, say in ascending or descending scale. Or you may use a mixture of all kinds of chords, a mixture of broken, a mixture of single chords, or you can use canons, or where you repeat the melody in the accompaniment. You can either have a contrasting accompaniment, which contrasts the melody in terms of rhythm, number of notes you use in the chord, and accentuation, dynamics, and general contour, and note number and types of note intervals. Of course, so many other properties you can vary as well. but it's often common to use a very similar structure in your accompaniment to the melody. You may in fact use octaves, where using the same notes, where both hands play, say, a sequence, say G A D, but the G's are in octaves in both hands. So you have an octave 2G, an octave 3G, an octave 4G, and an octave 5G, and you play those in a sequence. You may have, instead of having just octaves, have chords, where you change the actual inner notes of the chords in sequence. So you may have a chord where you have the first, third and the eighth note, the octave, and then change to the first, the sixth and the octave to vary the inner chords to create some variation. So there's a whole variety of techniques you can use, and of course there are many other techniques. The other thing which should be said about arranging your accompaniment and also the melody, and this is especially true of orchestral music, is that you want to fit it often to the harmonic scale, which means that you'll probably start with an octave in the bass, followed by a fifth, followed by a third, followed by another third, followed by a second, followed by a minor second, in that order vertically. So you have the biggest gap at the bottom in the left hand in the bass, and you have the smallest gaps in the melody. You can look up about the harmonic scale and how you should apportion notes according to that, but generally the closer to the harmonic scale, the better the distribution of the notes is, especially in orchestral music. Having completed the beginning of the sentence, that is your two phrases with the appropriate harmony, you then want to repeat the phrases further, say a third and the fourth time, but this time you may want to vary the harmony. So if you did 1-5-5-1 for the beginning of the sentence, the first two phrases, you may want to do, say, 3-6-1-4, 3-6-1-4, which of course keeps progression going, but varies the harmony slightly. In addition to this, you probably want to liquidate or develop your phrases, which means that you remove parts of the phrase gradually and gradually alter parts of the phrase until the sentence embellishes into nothing. So the third and fourth phrases won't be exactly like your first two phrases, but will be parts of your first two phrases changed according to mode techniques and modes of derivation, which you can probably take too long to explain here. So having created your first sentence, that's called a sentence, you then want to probably do a slightly contrasting sentence in a different or related key, not too distant key. So generally, if you, for example, start in a key of, say, E major, you'd want to move to, say, B major or A major, where you have 3 or 5 sharps opposed to 4 sharps, which obviously changes the sharps only by 1. This is in contrast to a more remote key, such as C major, which has no sharps, so that would be very contrasting, and that would be too contrasting for your middle section. But generally, middle section, the actual content and motives don't want to be too distant, they want to be fairly similar, but slightly contrasting to the opening sentence, and that's probably the main thing about middle section. The final section in any ternary form basically wants to be what's called a recapitulation of the opening sentence. So it's the same opening sentence but varied slightly. It's important that you keep a general form of the whole opening sentence, so you have balance, and so that the listener can remember and keep in mind what was in the first sentence. Now, this is one of the important things about music. The more you keep in mind what was originally played, the more the listener enjoys the music. It's often not so much about contrasting music, but about similarity and repetition with some slight variation to overcome monotony. I'd say probably the most important thing is that you create music that people want, and think what people like to hear. So you're not introspective in your music, and so you do create music that people like. And it's often is a lot, of course, you can do a lot of technique, but the best thing at the end of the day is your ear to listen and decide what you think is good to play. That probably concludes, for the most part, what I want to say in this first video about composition. That a composition of that size, which I've talked about, is often called a small ternary form. We have three parts. They're in symmetry, obviously. You have a BA form. We have the A section, the opening sentence, the B section, the contrasting section, and the A section, the recapitulation. In larger forms, such as the sonata form, you may have several ternary forms within the whole work. In the case of the sonata, you have the exposition, which is a small ternary form, the elaboration, which is slightly different but nonetheless akin to a small ternary form, and the recapitulation, which is also akin to a small ternary form. That's all for now. If you want to see how these tips can be put together, I've done a few compositions and improvisations which you can see on my YouTube channel, which is you can find by searching for my username, which is DMP14011. Thank you for listening.